You just need to get good evening, everyone, and welcome to Good Guy Sports. We hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving break. I know all of us here at Good Guy Sports did. So today we're going to cover a couple different sports topics and recap some of what we missed the previous week, and also preview some interesting matchups and the playoff picture going forward. I know we have a big game tonight in Detroit between two teams that have a really good record and are both still in play for that NFC North crown, with the Packers traveling to Detroit, obviously, on Thursday Night Football. So a lot has been said about Detroit possibly being the top tier NFC team, and obviously they are currently, but Philadelphia is chasing their coattails pretty tightly as we speak. So we know the Eagles will certainly be rooting for the Packers tonight, right, Jack, to try to make up some ground in the NFC.
Oh, absolutely. You think about it, where these games really matter. Jordan Love and the Cheesehead and the Packers. Well, you think about their last previous matchups that they play against each other. Well, it dates back to last season on Thanksgiving, where the Packers actually beat the Lions on that exact field on that Thanksgiving of last year. So it's happened many times, and it's been in the Packers' favor. So we're close games and really matter. And Packers, I mean, and in First Night Football history, I could even date back to 2015, where Aaron Rodgers had that great Hail Mary touchdown, and that was really what sealed and get the Packers to win that night in that game. So really, if you think about it, it's always been in the Packers' favor, and I think if they really play healthy and really just Matt LaFleur's game plan has really has has really been dominant as of late. Well, most of it against the Lions. Well, if it all goes well and planned and healthy, then they're good. Then they might have a chance to win the game.
For sure, yeah. I think obviously we know that Detroit has a great home field advantage, and they've been firing on all cylinders this year, to be fair. So you can't really find too many faults in that Detroit team. I think Green Bay has been pretty consistent so far this year as well. Obviously, their last loss was coming against the Lions themselves earlier. So they'll certainly be out for revenge in this matchup, but they've had quality wins all throughout the season, to be fair. And you know, they've lost they lost the Packers lost the first week against Eagles, which is an international game, which is first week of the season, and the other two losses were against NFC North opponents in Minnesota and Detroit, obviously. So I think the NFC North, a lot of people would have probably wouldn't be too surprised, but by the fact that it's definitely the most competitive division in the NFL. I mean, even the Bears, obviously, they've had a pretty poor showing on Thanksgiving, which maybe wasn't too big of a shock, and they've obviously let go of their coach now because of that. But they've even had a couple of bright sparks amongst their team as well. So, but that group of teams in Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay is just kind of all beating up on each other this year. So, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Green Bay finds a way, but I think, Mike, you said that you're pretty high on Detroit tonight.
Yeah, I think the Lions will win. I mean, they just squeaked by the Bears last week, but I think that was a good wake up call for the Lions. Uh, I don't see the Lions losing at home.
Yeah, and you certainly could argue that was more so the Bears losing that game than the Lions winning it, right? Which is probably part of the reason that Eberflus got let go in Chicago after that kind of
Hmm.
interesting late game decision there, where they, you could argue Chicago kind of shot themselves in the foot there, but yeah, I mean certainly Detroit has found a way to win these games, so.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, Blake. The Bryce Young, he's looking good the last few weeks.
Hey, you know what they say. You just got to put, as Frank Martin said, he looked at Sindarius Thornwell. He fell asleep in a team meeting. He said, "I don't care if you're an All American." He said, I'll kick anybody off this team right now. I don't care what you did in high school. Sometimes these players have just never been benched before. And it
Yeah.
takes, ride, as they say in baseball, riding the pine. I don't think they're even made out of pine anymore. Sometimes you got to ride the pine and it'll wake you up a little bit, You're not
Yeah.
invincible anymore. So there you go.
Is he going to lead to an upset against the Eagles in Philly?
Not even close. As a
mean,
matter of fact, I don't know what is the spread on this game. I'd be really intrigued.
I don't know, 101.
Philly.
I am looking at it, and
Yeah,
it's
no, it's Philly by 13, right?
yeah, Philly is favored
2
by
touchdowns,
13,
basically.
total of 455 point spread.
Well, I'm going to ask.
Well, 40, yeah. Something like that. Basically,
well, I'm
yeah.
asking you guys 2 touchdowns. I'm taking Philly all day. Am I crazy, Mike? You taking Philly on that all day? Monopoly money?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't
Same.
know. I mean, we saw Bryce Young take the Chiefs all the way
That's a good point,
in
Blake. Good
Carolina,
point.
right?
Good point.
And I mean, you could argue the Chiefs have kind of been stagnating on offense all year, so maybe that actually wasn't as big of a shock as it turned out to be. Um, but yeah, I have a hard time seeing how Carolina's going to stop Saquon given kind of the form that he's showing right now, right? I mean, he seems like he's probably the best player in the NFL right now, like the way that
Mhm.
he's running the ball, so he's going to be the one to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of football, Jackson, I'm sure you got this coming up. I don't know if you were aware, but this past weekend there's something called Rivalry Week, and boy, oh
Oh
boy,
yeah, I know what you're
did
talking
it
about. I'm going to get
did it
right
live up
into
to
it
its name?
because look, I have a lot of I have listen. You and I were texting me um back and forth on my phone on our phones
You
together
said you couldn't watch it.
over
You
the
said you were
break,
so
and
nervous you couldn't even watch it.
that's because I was scared. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was
The
just wanted to see
Gamecocks.
how it all played out. So
Yeah.
yeah, look, I mean, look, yeah, you and me were texting on our phone together over the holiday break, but I have to admit that one of those 2 games I want to get my that I really want to get my that I really want to talk about and just really whatever my thoughts are is that South Carolina, yeah, they they knew that this team was going to show up, and Clemson just didn't want to show no fight, but Beamer Ball, South Carolina, just
Yeah.
somehow found a way to win over at what was a tough environment at Death Valley, and that was really that was really the biggest headline in that game is South Carolina, although they trailed most of the game, it looked like, and then just somehow just stuck right in it after they somehow found a way to get the win. Now in the other game, in the game, Ohio State and Michigan,
Sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And think about it. Michigan still found a way to win the game even without Harbaugh, and they did it without a walk-on quarterback, which to me is unheard of, which there was a lot of headlines in this game where you had Michigan was dominant in the most rush yards in the game come in most rushing yards in the game, whereas Ohio State had the lead, but somehow just got away with interceptions and missed, and their kicking game was, and the Buckeyes and Ohio State's kicking game wasn't that great, and then and then Michigan just really outplayed them. And then all of a sudden, after the game was over, you had this plant the flag on the field.
Mm.
Everybody was in the scrum and a fight. And Uncle Mike, you can relate to that because this is
What is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it means.
Jackson, is Mike a big fighter?
That's in the similar that is actually similar to a brawl in baseball. So it has that
Yeah.
same exact
Okay.
feel, if you know what I mean. So
Clearing of the benches kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
it all played out, and really there was a bunch of like teasers, and the cops were just all over on the field, just trying to make them clear the field so that they don't destroy it or anything. And
A little bit of pepper
really,
spray, Jack.
Yeah.
and really listen to Brian Day's press conference, and he didn't look very happy. He was very frustrated,
Mm.
and to me, he was saying stuff. he was saying stuff that this was supposed to be our field. Well, it will. Well, yet again, it still wasn't the case. Michigan still owns Ohio State, and I got news for you. Michigan recruiting might be a lot better than Ohio State and Oregon. Well, watching the national watching the watching the National Signing Day shows on ESPN. Well, I got news for you. Oregon is ahead of Ohio State. Ohio State still has the best recruiting class in the nation, but when it comes to on-the-field talent,
$20 million.
still owns Ohio State, and that's really the storyline right there.
Yeah.
My take on Good Guys Sports.
Well, that loss caused the Buckeyes not to go into the Big Ten championship game. It knocked them out. So the Big Ten championship.
Who's the matchup?
Penn State at Oregon.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. That's
because
very interesting.
because of that loss.
You know, who would have ever thought a flag could bring so much? It's just the flag. It's like, we're cool with you guys coming over here yelling at us, saying things, but you bring a flag out here and
you put it on our field. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, that was pretty ballsy.
Mike, baseball reminds me of baseball. Who clinched the playoffs and jumped in the swimming pool? Was it at Arizona Diamondbacks and they jumped in the pool in the outfield? They ran out there, jumped over the fence. They had a swimming pool in the outfield, and the other players were very upset that the opposing team. Who was that? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I can't
Sounds
remember.
familiar. Yeah,
it's familiar. I'm not sure who it was, but you know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like interesting though. Like it does seem kind of crazy that it was like multiple teams kind of did the. It just seemed like there was this past weekend was just like upset weekend where there's so many teams winning away at their big rivals.
Mm-hmm.
So it just happened that all of them ended up, celebrating and planting a flag on their opposing field, and obviously that we saw one with UNC and NC State over here as well, where NC State won in Chapel Hill and tried to plant a flag, and the UNC players were throwing it out of their hands and all that kind of stuff. And like, I mean, part of me is like, I understand why a team would get upset at that. It's not good sportsmanship, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also like, I mean, you lost the game to your rival at home.
Yeah.
So like, if you get that upset about it, then maybe you should have won the game. But, it's just kind of one of those things that college sports ends up bringing out with these intense rivalries, right?
It reminds me of what the manager of the Orioles AAA team in Norfolk once said. He goes, "If you don't like it here, play better."
That's right. Win. If you don't like it, win.
If you don't like it, play better.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of UNC, guys, I know you followed Mac Brown a little bit in the whole situation, but let me give you real quick. You can't make this up. This is not fake information. This is true. September 21st, Mac Brown tells the team he's stepping down. The very next day, September 22nd, UNC Chapel Hill says he's not leaving. November 25th, Mac Brown says he will be back. The very next day, November 26th, UNC says he won't be coming back. What's going on in Chapel Hill, guys? What's going on with are the coach and the AD not on the same page? They got different phone numbers? Is he getting texted by somebody else? What's going on?
It's just not right from what I'm hearing. It's just I think the students at UNC and Chapel Hill athletic staff and their director and their program there just really just getting some like mixed feelings with that program and just really and to me they just really weren't really sure what was going on and just really just had no idea what was going to happen, and that was just my kind of reaction and feel to it.
Who's going to be the coach, Jack? Is there Saban? Is Saban talks for a team? Who's talking about Saban? What team is that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm maybe UNC. I don't know. I don't really have all the full details on this, but
but I think to get back to
you should go after one of Mac Brown's assistant coaches to really to fill in the shoes, to take the helm, and just really fill in that spot would be my guess.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely interesting. I mean, I wasn't aware Mac Brown was kind of worth all this trouble in terms of will he or won't he kind of thing. I know I feel like he was kind of a bit past his best, honestly, when they brought him back. So I'm not really sure what they're umming and ahhing about so much with Coach Brown. I guess he was there previously as well, so he's got like a good reputation there. So maybe they didn't want to treat him poorly in terms of letting him go during the season and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's been kind of an interesting season for a lot of teams. Definitely, in the ACC as well. So it definitely ended up being an interesting ending to the Mac Brown era. And then as well, even more kind of interestingly as well, the team that ended up having, we talk a lot about ACC teams this year in the foot and football specifically, and the team that ended up having the best season was SMU, who I don't think most people even knew they were in the ACC, and they'll be playing for ACC championship game come Saturday. So that should be
Yeah,
that would be a
playing Clemson, who lost last weekend.
well, exactly. And a lot of people would have thought, or well, I mean, Miami would have thought they would be a shoo-in for that game as well, but they obviously
Miami got beat by Syracuse. That knocked them
exactly.
out.
So they obviously had their late season struggles, and yeah, I mean that's kind of predictable. I know I was never really too convinced from that Miami would put together a full season.
Hmm.
Maybe there's still a chance for them to sneak into the playoffs. Maybe we can talk about the CFP rankings in a bit, but in terms of the title matchups, we got obviously the Big 12 game with Arizona State, Iowa State, SEC with Texas, Georgia, ACC, SMU,
Yeah.
Clemson,
Well, he
and
would
then
have thought that the Big 12 would have been ended up Iowa State and Arizona State.
oh, exactly. I mean, you feel Colorado kind of let the ball drop on that one, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Well, and BYU
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as well. I mean, you would have thought that those two teams, 2 weeks ago, you would have thought that it would have been those two teams in there. But then in the SEC, Georgia made it back to the championship game. They're playing at Texas.
If
Yeah.
Georgia loses that game, is South Carolina in the playoffs?
I think,
Blake, I think they're. I think if you're, I think if they want, I think if they want to get a chance to get in, they're currently on the edge of the 12th ranked team right now. So if you're a Gamecock fan, you got to have a lot of chaos and you got to have a lot of scenarios happen, like
Oh, so
like
they're not completely
yeah.
out yet. I thought it was a done deal.
So if you're a Gamecock fan, you got to root for SMU to beat Clemson,
Okay,
and you got to root for Texas to beat Georgia, and
I can do that too.
that's really the scenarios that I look at, and that's really your only hope if you're a Gamecock fan, and really where the playoff where the where their playoff hopes are going to be for the Gamecocks. It would most likely be a road playoff game at a away at a at a away site for the opposing road.
Oh, of course, of
Yes.
course.
So yeah. So that's
Well, Jackson, I want to ask you and the panel this question: Did you guys think? Did you guys think that on December 5th we would be discussing why South Carolina did not get in the FBS playoffs? Did you think we'd be having this conversation if I asked you at the beginning of the year?
Oh yeah. I mean, look, I got a lot of questions. I mean, the committee just really just had no choice but to really put the teams that really that are ahead of them. I mean, look, I'm not in charge of the committee or the college football playoff or any of the FBS opponents or whoever's the head person of the people of the FBS. I'm not in control. They are. So I just don't know what the deal was or what's going to really happen because I can't predict all that. So really just going to have to wait and see and just see how it all plays out.
yeah, no, for sure. I think obviously we've seen some really good strides made from Coach Beamer, given what he was taking over when he took the helm there in Columbia, and they've obviously made great strides. And I mean, you could argue that South Carolina is maybe unlucky that just given their conference and their schedule that and I think them finishing 9-3 in their regular season play is extremely impressive. And obviously they've they had quality wins as well over the likes of Clemson, Missouri, Texas A&M. So they've obviously put together a really strong schedule, and I don't want to pull in the CFP bias. I have my issues with the CFP committee, but I think right now the teams that are kind of sneaking in there at the end of it would be Alabama in terms of that
Yeah.
sort of they would sneak in at that 11
But
seed.
could South Carolina surpass Alabama? They both have the same identical overall records and the same records in the conference,
Right.
given the fact that Alabama lost last weekend in Oklahoma
Hmm.
24-3.
Unranked team as well, right?
An unranked team 24-3.
Wasn't even
And
close.
earlier in the season they lost to Vanderbilt.
They did. We are well aware of that on Good Guy Sports.
So
Were.
yeah, I mean, who would have thought on de December 5th we'd be talking about Alabama not making, possibly not making the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think certainly I don't want to say that, past performance ends up playing a bit of a biased role in terms of who the CFP is going to put in, but I mean, if we're just looking at it, on facts, Alabama's, like you said, same record overall, same record in conference. Their three losses were away at Vanderbilt, who I mean, I love Vanderbilt, but they're unranked team still.
Hmm.
Away at Tennessee, which is a quality loss. Tennessee's good. They're going to be a playoff team in all
Hmm.
consideration. Oklahoma, unranked team, not a playoff team, and then whereas they're ranked currently in the overall rankings at 11. And then if you look at South Carolina, their losses were versus LSU, who are a ranked team. They're not going to be a playoff team, but they're a ranked
Hmm.
SEC team. They lost to Ole Miss, who are a ranked team and just on the edge of the playoffs, won't make it, but they're a ranked SEC team. And then similarly, they did lose to Alabama, who the CFP rank thinks are a better team than them. So if you're looking at quality of losses, you would
Yeah.
argue South Carolina's three losses are to stronger opponents, right?
Yeah, I had forgotten they lost to Alabama, so that's what is going to hurt them
So ultimately, we think the
because
head-to-head is going
because
to
the
kill
head to
them.
head, yeah, the head that's one of their first rankings is going to be is the head to head.
It was at Alabama though, so maybe
Yeah, but they still lost.
I can still, but I think in my head, I can make the case for South Carolina losing at Alabama. And by the way, it was a close game,
Yeah,
27-25, right?
yeah.
So I think if I'm South Carolina, and obviously they're going to make their case because
Hmm.
they feel like they should be there, but losing all of their losses being to teams that were ranked, if I'm just looking at it now in the top 25 come the end of the season versus Alabama losing two games to unranked opponents, whereas we lost the head-to-head at Alabama. So
Yeah.
certainly I understand the committee saying this team beat this team in the regular season. That's that. But I can't help but feel there's a little bit of historical bias that goes into
Hmm.
that selection as well. So
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would like to see the Gamecocks in there. So don't get me wrong.
Now,
Do you think do you think the
don't
same
forget that. Yeah, don't forget that they are
who
actually
is
15th ranked. So really, you also don't want to forget about Ole Miss because they went because they also went head to head against South Carolina from their loss at for this past season. So really, it's really going to come down to Ole Miss, Alabama, and South Carolina. The way that this committee shakes up for the final ranking come next Sunday. So that will be this coming Sunday. So that will be fascinating to watch. And also for other teams that are impacted, that are right on the cut line for college football playoff, teams like Miami are also one are really also one of them. So BYU, UNLV are in one of them, but really Ole Miss, Alabama, and South Carolina and Miami is we're the teams to watch to see if they make the college football playoff because if you're a Canes fan, you just lost to Syracuse unexpectedly, got upset by the Orange and the Carrier Dome, and that's really not what you want to see if you're a Miami Hurricanes
no,
fan.
I think
But
Miami's done because they've lost
yeah,
to
I agree.
Georgia Tech. and they've lost to Syracuse, two teams the committee probably has never even heard of, to be honest. So yeah, I think they're in trouble.
That's what I'm saying. They are, yeah. So since they're not playing in the ACC championship game, since if they were to win against Syracuse, we could be having a whole different conversation. But since they lost, they are out. They are going to be most likely out of the playoff, and Clemson replaced them instead, and we will be having a and that's
No, I don't think Clemson's going to make it
yeah.
anyway. I think SMU is going to
I didn't say,
be
Yeah.
the singular ACC representative. I think only
Well,
one team from the ACC will make it, and it'll be SMU of all teams.
yeah, and think about it. SMU, BL Weinberger. You think about the
Pony
team.
Express, baby.
Well, yeah, Mustangs, baby. You think about it, Blake. And if you think about the Mustangs as a team name, well, think of it this way. Think of it this way.
Sally?
Sorry, I mean, I'll topic it here, but think about it this way. A fun sports car that Blake Lumberger can get behind the wheel and drive.
I thought you were going to say Sally, thinking of Uncle Mike. I thought you were going
Yeah,
to say
Mustang
I
Sally.
could say that too, but really, that's a whole nother conversation. But you get the idea.
Ride, Sally, ride.
Blake makes a good point about who are these teams. Do you think there's also some people out there that are like, who's South Carolina? I've never heard of this team. They've been out of the limelight a little too long in the football area where they're like, who's South Carolina? Is that USC? Is that Southern California? What USC is this?
I think you're referring to and talking about the University of Southern Cal, who now play in the Big Ten. So
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, I do genuinely think that in terms of who has made the playoffs and who has played in these big games in the past couple of years does make a difference. And maybe the committee, they probably would say otherwise, and they would say we look at the season as a whole. And I think we will end up having a team like SMU or Boise State that ends up kind of getting in the slot. But I mean, honestly, I think that's only because of the restrictions they put on themselves. If people don't know, the top four seeds go to the highest ranked conference champions. So in all likelihood, Boise State will get a top four seed and automatic bye because they'll be the conference champion from the Mountain West, even though the Mountain West wouldn't be a particularly highly rated category from the committee. But a team like SMU and Boise State will benefit from being in a conference that they're more likely to win versus the SEC and Big Ten. So it's another wrinkle in there as well.
I'm going to put a name out there that I saw in the top 25 that I don't think in my lifetime I've ever seen in the top 25. Mike Roby might have seen him in the top 25 back in the day. University of Las Vegas entered the top 25 this week. How about that?
I've only seen UNLV in the basketball ratings before.
Yeah, they used to be good basketball back in the 90s.
Basketball, not football. I'm seeing Memphis and Army in the top 25.
No, he's right. He's right. UNLV is ranked 20 now, so they snuck in there, so they'll probably get a decent bowl. But yeah, it's interesting team for sure. In the
what conference? A little trivia for you guys. What conference is UNLV in?
They would be in the same,
Mountain West,
same as Boise, Mountain West. So in a different in a different reality, we would have had the UNLV in the playoffs possibly if they were able to better Boise State's record. So that would have been even more interesting. I do think I do understand why the reason that they have the playoffs set up the way they do with the first round buys is because they needed all of the existing conferences to sign off on the playoff committee essentially. So it's really ended up being a negotiation tactic where the ACC, the Mountain West, what's left of the Pac-12 has to kind of grab their scraps, right?
Right. Well, I also would think that the TV revenue plays a part in there because
definitely,
the quarterfinal games are going to be at the Rose Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and Peach Bowl, and so they want the TV revenue. Mm-hmm. So they want to make sure that they have popular teams.
100%. Yeah. I think that's kind of part of the issue that I have is it seems like they're trying to placate the fairness of spreading out the playoff spots to all the conferences and taking in all these factors. But ultimately it does seem like they end up making decisions based off of who are the biggest teams,
Who's
who's
going to
going
be the
to.
bigger draw?
Right, right. And
Yeah.
I'm sure if you watch the ranking reveal show, they would say otherwise, and they'd say we have our complicated methods and we're looking at strength of schedule and best win and best loss. But ultimately, if Alabama and South Carolina have the same record in the SEC, we know who's going to get in from the
Hmm.
committee, and
Yeah.
that's just kind of the way it is. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, we have a couple of games, the conference games this week, but
Hmm.
it's also kind of a outcome of the way that it's set up right now is that South Carolina can't really pass Alabama because neither team is playing this weekend, right? So the scenario to really I don't see a scenario where Georgia or Texas drop out, right? So ultimately, what are we really playing for this weekend in Atlanta, except for just obviously winning the SEC, which is a great trophy and a great achievement, but it's hard to see a scenario where either of those teams actually drop out of the playoffs. So that's kind of another unintended consequence of the playoffs is that possibly we're devaluing the conference championship games.
Yeah.
Well,
And
not only that, let me take it a step further. Are there any teams, I haven't paid close enough attention, but are there any teams where they would have a more advantageous route to the national championship if they happen to lose their conference game? In other words, they're in no matter what. But so, for example, Notre Dame is likely to get Alabama in their game, and that's not what they want. So
right.
they were a little lower seeded. So are there any teams that would possibly have a better route if they lost their championship game this weekend?
Well,
Their
yeah, I
conference.
mean, I think the interesting thing to see is that I mean, theoretically, why any of the teams not playing this weekend, you wouldn't expect their rankings to change unless, for example, we're seeing Georgia, who's currently ranked fifth, versus Texas, who's ranked second. So if we're saying that, it wouldn't shock. I would actually expect Georgia to win that game just because it's in Georgia. They're finished the season. Well, I mean, they finished the season kind of shakily actually against Tech, but I still would fancy Georgia in that game based off of how they played versus Texas. So does that mean Texas is going to slide all the way down to that like 7, 8, 9, 10, and then all of a sudden those kinds of matchups are changing? So that's kind of what I'm saying is that the committee can kind of do what they want in terms of taking in the results this weekend and then fitting in those matchups kind of how they see fit.
I'm looking at the point spread, and Texas is a 2.5 favorite. Like, come on, that's not even right. This, this, this can't be right. Is it because Texas is showing up as a better team? Like, come on, this can't
Well,
be right.
It's about to be a rich man, Jackson. Now that you just exposed that,
I mean, yeah, I honestly did not. Jackson, I had no idea. I thought UGA would be favored actually, given the fact that it's in Atlanta and they
No,
whooped
I
the
thought
Longhorns
But
you
it's
pretty
sure
bad.
it's
not.
in Atlanta. I thought it wasn't going to be played at the Cowboy Stadium.
No,
Mm,
no, it's in unless yeah, the I think the SEC game is always in Atlanta. Maybe
oh,
did they sign a deal to do it in other locations in the future, but this game on
Okay.
Saturday is in Atlanta, yeah. So
Okay.
it's obviously a big advantage for Georgia.
Yeah.
and so the college football playoff, the way that this format's to about 12 team, well, think about it. It's similar to March Madness in basketball, where anything can happen. It's going to have that kind of feel once the games kick off on December 20th, and it'll have that same kind of feel. It'll be like your high school playoff football game, and then and then it'll go to the first and second round and first round. Lots lots of confusion and something to really get used to if you're an average college football fan. So, and then you get quarterfinals, semifinals, and then the national championship game will be this year in Atlanta on January 20th. And we hope that, and we hope that we, and I hope that we all be there, but we'll see. But we'll see what happens. You never know. Plans might be changed. We'll see.
Yeah, and then as well, just to talk about the game that Mike mentioned earlier between Penn State and Oregon. That game will be in Indianapolis, so both teams having to travel a little bit. Um, Personally, I'm not super convinced that Oregon is by far the best team in the country. I know
Well,
that the rankings would say so. They're 12-0. They're the only undefeated team in the country. So obviously they're going to get favoritism. But if you do look at the schedule, and obviously they do have that marquee win against Ohio State by 1 point, which I'm not saying they were lucky to win that game, but ultimately that game could have gone either way. And then apart from that, their only other quality win really against a ranked opponent was Illinois, who currently ranked 20th, and it was a home game. Wasn't particularly close. So I'm a little bit surprised by some of these Big Ten teams that we hear about, all these great teams joining the Big Ten with, uh, obviously with Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, all these big teams joining. But a lot of these conferences end up not really looking that impressive. This is a whole argument we said about Indiana, where they haven't played anybody. They got beat by Ohio State. All of a sudden, they're looking at possibly exiting the playoffs. So I'm personally wouldn't be surprised if Penn State wins this game, just because I feel like Oregon might be slightly overvalued, but that's just me.
Well, let's go to Mike, the playoff expert in baseball. Mike, I mean, with what Blake just said, with Oregon, does it hurt them or help them that they haven't faced as stiff of competition as a lot of these teams in the SEC and possibly the Big Ten have faced going into the playoffs?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think that the fact that Oregon's playing at home, and you have to remember their quarterback Dylan Gabriel is a candidate for the Heisman.
Mm-hmm.
The game is in Indianapolis though, so
oh well.
So this will be a neutral site as well. So obviously Pennsylvania is not right next door to Indiana, so you could argue it's not maybe a huge advantage for Penn State, but it's also not going to be an advantage for Oregon not having the big green crowd there, right? So,
but if this were Ohio State, then that would be a easy travel for the Buckeyes fans, since the state of Ohio is next door to Indiana.
I don't want to hear about Ohio State. I mean, these guys can't win a big game for their lives, but
I mean, listen, Ohio is right next to Indianapolis.
I'm aware.
They've been on this road and used to it before. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's a shame that Indiana couldn't get there. They'd have a conference game in their home state, but I guess they're still hanging on to their playoff hopes. But
yeah,
I mean, my only point is that
their loss to Michigan State hurt them.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I just think my point is that maybe the Big Ten is not quite what we thought it was, and so I just think Oregon might be representative of that. Obviously, I could be made to look a fool come playoff time, but
you have to remember. I mean, Penn State lost to Ohio State earlier in the season.
That's true.
That's right.
And Oregon beat Ohio State, not by much. I think by 1 point, but
Yep.
And I just wonder when we talk about Oregon, do we have East Coast bias? Most of the teams we follow are on either in the SEC or in the Eastern Coast. We don't follow too many teams out west.
Well, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now that might give your quarterback, David Daniels, a run for his money for ROI?
Bo Nix.
And where did he go to school?
He went to Oregon.
Who knows, Bo?
And Broncos got the same records as the Commanders, 8-5.
Holy smokes!
How about that? And
go ahead, Jack. Go ahead.
Is a Under Armour school. Well, Oregon is a Nike school because that's where their headquarters are. So,
well, I was about to bring that up, Jack. You know who the most nervous man in America is right now going into the playoffs, the college football playoffs?
Who's that?
A man by the name of Phil Knight, who has openly said he's willing to spend as much money as it would take to get a national championship before he goes and talks to the good man upstairs. Openly said he is willing to spend whatever it'll take. So I'd say he's probably the most nervous man in the U.S. right now.
Well, I don't blame him. I mean, he's doing his job for his part.
Yeah, so I think ultimately to kind of like put a bow on our conference championship chat here is that I think the most interesting scenario that we should be looking out for on Saturday is if the teams that are lower ranked than the team they're playing in these games end up winning. So if Georgia beats Texas, if Penn State beats Oregon, both scenarios that I wouldn't be shocked happens, then I think it'll be interesting to see how the committee reshuffles the rankings, because ideally Georgia would get a top four seed being the conference champion. Penn State would get a top four seed being the conference champion. And then Oregon and Texas would slide all the way down some of those lower games. And then, like Blake was bringing up earlier, a team that thought like Notre Dame or, a team like Ohio State or Tennessee, they thought maybe they would be getting an easier matchup. They might end up getting in Oregon or Texas, who they thought would they would avoid in the first round. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this shuffles out.
And that first round games will be home games for some school.
The higher seed, yeah, correct, yeah.
So it's not like
a big advantage.
It's not like they're playing on a neutral until they get to the quarterfinals and the semifinals, or even the conference championships. Are at least two of them are played on a neutral field.
Correct. Yeah, no, it's definitely a huge advantage to have in that first round. So being that higher seed is going to be, it's going to be massive. So those teams that are just on that precipice of that 8 and 9 is going to be a huge advantage, and how the committee ends up squaring that is going to be interesting.
Yeah. So, for example, if Texas loses, they could host a first round game in the playoffs.
Good point. Good point.
Definitely.
Let me ask you guys this.
There.
Let me ask you guys this, and I don't mean this sarcastically, but are you guys surprised that they expanded the amount of teams to have, less argumentative teams saying we should have got in, and here we are with the expansion, and guess what? There's a lot of teams, we just named them, that are saying we should get in, and we don't think we are. Are you guys surprised, or did y'all kind of think we'd be in the same situation?
I mean, personally, I'm not surprised. I think there's always going to be teams that feel as though they're being left out or they're being hard done by the committee, given sort of some of the teams that sneak in ahead of them. But at the same time, I also don't think the committee is doing themselves any favors, given the current way that the playoff system is set up with the first round buys for the conference champions, because you end up having teams that play in much weaker conferences that have much weaker quality wins versus teams. And so a team like South Carolina can always say, well, how did an SMU or a Boise State get in over us? Who do they play? Whereas that's just the way that the committee was forced to set it up. So ultimately, no one's going to be happy, but they didn't do themselves any favors as well, I feel, given the structure.
Well, now you have teams that have lost 3 games and 2 games making the playoffs, whereas in previous years, none of them would have made the playoffs.
Correct. Yeah. We saw an undefeated team miss the playoff last year, right?
Yeah.
With Florida State. So
Florida State, yeah.
Oh, I know. And as I remember, it did not go so well for them, because the reason why is because their quarterback was injured. They weren't very healthy, and they haven't been the same since. And sometimes that's usually just throws a wrench and plays a factor on them, and that's usually when it happens.
Jack, to say they haven't been the same since is probably the biggest understatement you've ever had. I just forgot that they were undefeated last year. Man, what a turnaround for a team. Gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, things can just flip like that. So
gosh, what a turnaround.
Yeah.
Yeah, so also before we have very little time, so I wanted to see if we want to touch on some other games that we missed on. Who do you like in the Iowa State-Arizona game tomorrow at noon?
I think Arizona State will sneak in as the Pac-12, but you also have to keep in mind as well that if SMU wins and Boise State will be the Mountain West champion, then the committee doesn't have to let in any Pac-12 teams if they don't want to, right? So theoretically, South Carolina could take Arizona State's place or Iowa State, whoever it is, as the Pac-12 champion. So that's something. It's something to keep in mind as well. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they only have to give 4 conference champions a first round bye. So theoretically, that could be the ACC winner.
Well, that's all they got is the first round buys is 4.
Exactly. Yeah. So
And
they
you
don't
got
have any
five conferences.
exactly. They don't have any obligation to the Big 12 to automatically give them a spot. So that's something as well important to
Yeah.
mention for South Carolina fans listening, that you could end up taking that Pac-12 spot from somebody, you never know, but it could happen. I probably would assume the committee would want to get one Pac-12 team in there just for maybe just to for consistency to get as many conferences as possible, but you never know.
All right, real quick. So I want to finish up here.
Yeah, no, we got a few extra minutes,
We have
Jax.
very
We
little
can
time, Blake. I know we have very
No,
little
no,
time.
no, no. It's fine. We can go an extra 10, 15 minutes because we started a bit late. So you're all good, man.
So, okay. Well, anyway, I want. Did any of you guys happen to catch the Duke Auburn game? It was a back and forth affair. Did any of you catch it or saw it or or watch it or catch any of the highlights of it on TV? Did any of you watch that game last night?
Give us the recap, Jack. What happened?
So so it was crazy. So Auburn was off to a great start in the first half, but things but things were off to a sloppy start since starting the start of the second half, meaning that Duke was off to a rough start in the first half. They find a way to bounce back in the second half, and then all of a sudden, Duke and Cooper Flag and all those star players showed up in the second half, and John Shire just made an adjustment at halftime, and then just like that, Duke wins and somehow beats the SEC. Think about it. A SEC team at Cameron Indoor Stadium has not won since Vanderbilt in 1981. So
Wow.
That's
That's
a
a
great
big
yeah,
stat. Yeah.
fact.
so really, the head-to-head between Bruce Pearl and John Shire. Well, guess what? Duke has won their last five meetings against Auburn, and Auburn, sorry to say this for anyone who's an Auburn fan, has lost the five previous meetings against our Duke Blue Devils. The Cameron Crazies made it hard and difficult for the Auburn Tigers, and that was really the difference. And that has how Duke won the basketball game. And Duke, just like as many of us perspective, found a way to get in the very end despite the slow start.
Mhm.
That's how they won the game at Cameron Indoor Stadium last night. And I'm sure Mr. Kevin was out there in the crowd cheering loud and proud very well. And I'm sure that he was there to witness it.
Yeah. Number one, Kansas lost last night too.
Yeah, they lost to Creighton in an upset. Ooh.
76 to 63.
Also in college basketball news, Alabama beats UNC in the game before Duke and Auburn in the SEC ACC Challenge and at home against Alabama showing up and just quieting the crowd at the Dean Smith Center. That Alabama, yeah, that's right, Blake.
Jackson also,
Alabama is that Alabama. Nobody's even talking about them, but but Nate Oates and those guys, well, I mean, they're just getting better and they're getting better and they're a basketball school and something that Alabama fans should be more excited about, that they are actually a championship
Yeah.
contender. Why? They made it all the way they made a run at the Final Four last year, and that team has shown time and time again why this team gets better. Now, they did lose a key player in injury, but they always find ways to win. And I think this team has got a lot of talent, and they know how to win games. And Nate Oates, he's just the best man on the job for this Alabama team.
Yeah.
Jackson also in basketball news, the SEC being a football conference and the ACC being a basketball conference, maybe an old wise tale, because I believe the record is something staggering like 12 and
11-1.
2. I think the SEC won 12 out of the games, and I think ACC won 2 of the games. Something crazy like that.
Wow, that is crazy and unheard of. I can't even believe the SEC rules and dominates our conference. The ACC once again, there's nothing you can take away from it.
And and one more all in basketball for Mike's the closest to this team, but a team that is in danger of dropping out of the top 25. You're never going to believe this is a team by the name of University of Connecticut. Who would have ever thought?
They had a couple of tough
Hey,
losses early in the year. It's maybe certainly not the same Connecticut team that we've seen, which is understandable given some of the turnover, some of these big stars going to these big teams, and it's hard to maintain that level in college basketball. So yeah, we could have a bit of a shakeup come March, that's for sure.
Blake,
Do you think their coach should have taken the
that's what I was going to say.
taken the deal for the Lakers job?
Well, the Lakers aren't doing
So,
great right now, so maybe I mean he might be better just having an off year and then reloading next year in Connecticut.
Yeah.
yeah, well, think about it. I can relate because Manchester City has won every title in their Premier League cup run. You know this, Blake, because you follow the Premier League and watch it as an average fan. Well, think about it. They're like that, and think about it. At some point, you realize it's going to be hard for a repeat. When I think of all sports in North American or in European history, rather. So really, it's part of an example of that. So even though it's college sports, but you get the idea. So I really so at some point you got to think that one of these teams can somehow beat UConn, let's say in late March or an NCAA tournament, that it can happen. I just got to see it to believe it. And that's really what it comes down to. So same with the Chiefs with their playoff run. Think about it. Everybody in the media has picked the Bills to win the AFC, but not so fast because we've seen this happen last year, and I feel like this trend is going to happen every single year, where you never bet against Patrick Mahomes, and that's really why they won those close games. That's really the difference maker right there.
Yeah. Well, I
Someone,
think the Chiefs are the
until someone,
luckiest team.
yeah,
mhm.
until someone, until someone dethrones them or beats them, um, until someone beats them, I got to see it to believe in that, and that's really what it comes down
Yeah.
to. So
Well,
that's really
they just squeaked by the Raiders, so the Raiders didn't botch the last minute snap. The Raiders would have won that game last weekend.
and
Mike, what's the route for the is it too early to talk about the route for the Commanders in the playoffs?
No,
I think they've got the last NFC
they got
position
the
currently,
last
right?
NFC by a game and a half right now.
Okay.
They've got one of the easiest schedules uh, for remainder games. They play the Saints, they play the Cowboys, and they got to play the Eagles again. And I forget who their last opponent, but they could very easily go 3-1 their last 4 games. Of course, the game with the Eagles, they playing at home, so you never know when you have a division rivalry game.
well,
Uh,
speaking of strength of schedules, well, I don't know if you saw this, Blake, but Kirk Cousins has been off with his quarterback throwing in their game against the Chargers last week. Why? Because the Chargers showed up, and Jim Harbaugh finds ways to win the game, whether in the pro or college level, and the Falcons are just winless against AFC teams, and that's really this trend that what usually happens. And really, Kirk Cousins has been
Yeah, they're
really
still a playoff
off
team.
rhythm and just made terrible mistakes and just wasn't on. He was off sync and just made some terrible decisions. And to me, I have watched the press comments of Raheem Morris, and he is sticking with Kirk Cousins over Michael Penix. Like, really? That shouldn't happen because think about it. The Falcons, speaking of spring schedule, like you said, Mike, we mentioned about the Commanders. Well, the Falcons have one of the toughest strength of schedules in the next few last remaining games. They have to go. Kirk Cousins has got to go home to play against his former team at the Vikings. At the Vikings, home game against the Raiders should be home game against the Raiders, which is also another AFC team to keep your eye on. And then then the Giants, well, they can be the Giants, but the one game that's working on to be a flex game is against your Commanders, Mike, on the 29th of December. And then of course also a flex game that closes out against the Panthers. So really, if you think about it, the Bucks won in an escape with a thriller in overtime at Bank of America Stadium in Blake Lumberger's hometown
Mhm.
team. And really, the way I look at it is that I favor in the Buccaneers advantage just because they have a better defense and their schedules and their schedule is a
Hmm.
bit manageable, and and so really their schedule I think favors in the NFC South, and that's really how I see this division playing out.
Yeah, I'd see the Falcons end up going 2-2 their last 4 games. They're I don't see them beating the Vikings. Um,
Yeah, especially in Minnesota. Yeah.
well, Cousins' touchdown to interception ratio for the last 3 games is 0-6. It's 0 touchdowns and 6 interceptions.
Wow.
Sam Darnold with the Vikings is just the opposite. His last 3 games, he's thrown 3 TDs and 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think he's going to have a very good homecoming when he goes up to Minnesota this weekend.
No, I tend to agree, but I think having that 3 game stretch of Vegas, Giants at home, and Panthers at home is going to ultimately
That's going to help, but
that's going to sneak Atlanta in there, I think, ultimately.
yeah. Well, the Giants, Raiders they're all 2-10, so they're in the race for the number 1 pick next year.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Them
So,
and the Jaguars.
no, I think going back to the Commanders though, I think if they want to have a chance at sneaking up to maybe that 6 seed, that you're going to want to be rooting for Detroit tonight to add another tack to the Green Bay, who's just above them in the 6 seed, because
Hmm.
obviously the 7 seed is going to have to most likely either face Detroit or Philadelphia away, whoever gets that 2nd seed, right? So
Yeah.
that's going to be a tough matchup in either direction. So I think if sneaking into that 6 seed
Yeah.
would be probably the most likely scenario for improvement for
Yeah.
a Washington perspective.
Yeah. Well, the Lions play indoors, right?
Yes.
Correct.
So I'd rather go on the road and play the Lions indoors than
Fair. Fair.
Playoff game outdoors in December, it's gonna
well,
get
I
it,
wouldn't go to
it's
I
gonna
wouldn't
snow.
want to
You
go
never
to
know what
Philly to play anytime.
conditions
Oh
are going to
gosh.
be like.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the result of the night game for the Commanders and the Eagles earlier a few weeks back. So
Yeah.
Hey, hey, did you guys catch the Buffalo Bills San Francisco 49ers game in the snow? That was one of the most thing that the fans up in Buffalo are used to it and live for. And that's what they're known for. They're used to this weather. And think about it. And that's for the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. They're not built for snowy weather. It doesn't snow in San Francisco. They have rain over there, but they don't get snow. And the 49ers, they are not built for all-wheel drive weather out there in Buffalo.
The Bills Mafia.
Bills Mafia. Breaking tables and pushing little girls downstairs.
Yeah. Yeah. How about that? Even worse, breaking tables to the cheerleaders of the 49ers. Well, yeah, whatever. Anyway, so
yeah, could end up.
What are the Redskins fans? What are y'all known for when y'all tailgate? What are you guys doing?
Oh, they usually I don't know. Most of the stuff I've seen they're just doing barbecues.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not
just
much known.
some good food in the
Are the
tailgate
black
parking lot.
jerseys going to be the lucky jerseys now? You've had 2 great wins in those all blacks. Is that going to be
Yeah,
the lucky jerseys?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
hey, real quick, Blake. I know we're short on time once again, but I want to get one other game in real quick if I can.
Sure.
We got the Battle of the Birds. I hope Miss Karen's listening because we got the Seahawks taking on the Cardinals at the Toaster in State Farm Stadium. That was not where my dad was for work not long ago for his sales meeting, and which he did for on the trip anyway. But anyway, that's for another conversation. But look, in all seriousness, that this is going to be a matchup that Kyler Murray was coming off a loss last week against the Vikings. It was only by 1 point in heartbreaking fashion. This is going to be some this is going to be some fascinating game to watch either way. I know that you will be watching that game with me this Sunday if you're going to make it with me, Brother Blake, on the red zone. But this should be a great game to watch. I mean, think about it. It's the battle for the first place on the line for the NFC West. You got Geno Smith, and really, it's really going to come down to it's really going to come down to Kyler Murray and really that running back from Ohio State that plays for the Cardinals. You got to slow him down. That's really what the Seahawks got to do, and really looking at their roster, they got to slow down James Conner, and they just got to really Mike McDaniel's got to really show up with this game plan because the Seahawks better come to play because Arizona, Kyler Murray, they're a great team too, but Seattle, if I'm Mike McDonald as the head coach, I better get my players ready so that they can get this win at what should be a great environment out there in Glendale this Sunday.
For sure, yeah, and I think the Seahawks will come out to play, and they'll be sharp for that one. And as well, you mentioned Coach McDonald. We got to give him a special shout out because he just had a baby boy who is named Jack, which I think you'll be happy to hear, Jackson. So big shout
Right,
out to
right.
Coach McDonald and the Seahawks, and we'll be obviously cheering them on pretty hard this weekend, right? So
That's right. That's right. Definitely a lot to be excited for. Now that he's get to raise to be with his own family and his kids. It's something to be really excited for and to cheer for. And
for sure, for sure.
great for him. And I really and blessed to him. And I just really think that he's really living the moment in his life right now.
Absolutely. All right, Jack. I think we're out of time. You want to get us out of here?
Yes. 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 I hope that everybody has a great rest of your day. Good Guy Sports will be back at it next Thursday. I hope everybody joins us back at the same place, same time. Hope that everybody has a great night. Enjoy Thursday Night Football, and also don't forget to enjoy the South Carolina women's basketball game of the SEC ACC challenge on the women's side. Hope that everybody gets a chance to tune into that or Thursday Night Football tonight. Um, your choice. You decide, and we will talk more about it next week on our next show. Great, great show, everybody. Hope that everybody has a great rest of your night. And I'm Jackson Gerke, Good Guy Sports signing off, and we will see you next Thursday. Same place, same time, 5 o'clock. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks. Bye.